Radio with your host, Seth Cole.
Welcome everybody here to NNSCRA Radio on the NNSCRA YouTube channel. It's going to be a regularly scheduled thing now. We will have a NNSCRA Radio episode every Wednesday at noon, so be sure to tune in. Most of these will be recorded on Mondays or Tuesdays, and we're starting a new thing here as well, where you guys are getting to be in on the action. You guys are going to get to submit questions, and we've also got a cool little podcast thing here, so you guys are able to see what goes on here in the NNSCRA Radio studios and everything. But we are going to review a little bit of Texas, and then we're going to be looking forward towards the old Phoenix, now reconfigured ISM Speedway. So first off, let's cover Texas and kind of review whether it was a good race, whether it was a bad race. Of course, the big news about Texas that everybody talks about whenever we go to Texas is the fact of Turn 1 being reconfigured. It went from 24 degrees down to 20 degrees of banking. Carries a lot more speed, not a whole lot of grip. Nobody really likes to use the top line. Everybody hugs the bottom. If you use the top line, you lose so much momentum off the corner. Off of Turn 2, you don't get that straightaway speed. We saw it all weekend long with a couple of exceptions, one of them being Justin Allgaier, who somehow in the Xfinity race was able to make the high side work. Tremendous credit to him. Didn't end up winning the race, but we ended up having a couple of surprise winners, and I say surprise winners in terms of they weren't exactly the drivers I was expecting were going to be winning those races, and moving on to the Final Four at Homestead, talking specifically about the truck race and the Xfinity race. For the truck race, I think I was more expecting to see Johnny Sauter be a driver that was going to win, but of course that wasn't the case. Justin Haley ends up winning after Todd Gilliland ran out of fuel on the final lap. That made for a very exciting finish. I don't know what it is, but the truck races always seem to have the exciting finishes. There have been a couple in Cup, I will admit. The Martinsville race was an exciting finish. The Charlotte Roval race was an exciting finish, but the truck race always seems to, you never know who's going to win until the final lap kind of feeling. Todd Gilliland runs out of fuel. Justin Haley gets by. Haley goes on. He's into the championship for at Homestead, Miami. Moved to the Xfinity race. It was looking like it was going to come down to maybe Christopher Bell because he started working his way up there, even though he spun out in the first lap, but he got involved in another wreck later on. It looked like Justin Allgaier was going to be a driver that was going to have a shot at it. But out of the woodwork comes Cole Custer, who picked up his first and, up to that point, only Xfinity win last year at Homestead Miami Speedway, and he wasn't even in the Final Four for the championship that year. So that makes him a clear favorite going into Homestead Miami Speedway now, being a former winner, his first win coming there, and he's locked into the Final Four. I have to say, I enjoyed the two lower-tier races a lot better than I did the Cup race. The Cup race, I don't know if it might be, and this is just me thinking out loud, I don't know if it might be the length of the races at 1.5 miles that make it not as enjoyable. Because 334 laps at Texas. And I was really hoping there was going to be a fuel strategy kind of feeling there at the end. Even though we did have a couple of cautions come out, Joey Gase had trouble, David Starr spun out, and so that brought out some late yellow flags. But even at that point, I don't think we really had where there was going to be any fuel strategy coming into play. Some drivers had already hit pit road. They were good to go on fuel. Nobody had any question marks. It all came down to tires, which we found out tires really didn't matter either, because look at Kevin Harvick and Kurt Busch. That one time they went with 2 tires when everybody else went with 4, and they were able to maintain first and second. I think it was before the conclusion of the second stage, they went on to finish first and second in that second stage. So tires really weren't much of a factor either. So the Cup race didn't do it for me. It really didn't. I was not overly thrilled to see Kevin Harvick win because I've been trying to pull for the underdog guys in the Elite 8 is what I call them. Your Eric Almirola, your Clint Boyer, your Kurt Busch, your Chase Elliott. Basically anybody that's not in the big 3 of Truex, Kyle Busch, and Kevin Harvick. We knew Joey Logano was already locked in with his win at Martinsville last week. So you kind of thought one of the big 3 were going to win anyway. I was hoping maybe we'd see Chase Elliott, maybe Eric Almirola, who had a really good car. Did he have a car good enough to pass Harvick? I don't think so. I think he was right on par with Harvick. I think he could have closed and not really been able to make a move. So would Eric have been able to beat Harvick? I don't think so. I think Harvick had the best car of the SHR cars, but I think that they were right on par with each other in terms of whether Eric could have caught him, passed him, catch him, maybe pass him. I don't think so, because Harvick, Texas reminds me a lot of Atlanta. Harvick's able to hook the bottom in Atlanta. He was able to do the same here at Texas. I honestly, I don't think anybody could have beaten him. Ryan Blaney gave it a heck of a shot. He really did. I was pulling for Ryan Blaney. Have a non-playoff contender win, fine by me. I mean, Blaney had that win gifted to him, let's be honest, at Charlotte Roval. Not taking it away from him. I loved it that he won. I'm just saying he was right place, right time. He wasn't out in front at the time. And so he basically had a win handed to him because of the top two wrecking, which he earned. Do not get me wrong. I am not downing Ryan Blaney saying that it wasn't a legitimate win. Not at all. But it would have been his third career win, which would have been awesome to see. But he just couldn't hold the bottom like Harvick. Nobody could. So Harvick, while I didn't want to see one of the big three win, the fact of the matter is the best car won. Harvick's car was locked up all day. He swept the entire race, both stages, and the final stage, the win of the race. So did the right guy win? Absolutely did. So right now we've got Logano and Harvick that are locked into the Final Four. We're going to go to our first question, which is from Charles Belding. If Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. are not part of the Final Four, because a lot of people assuming it's now looking like it's going to very easily be Logano, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., and Harvick being the Final Four that will compete for the championship. A lot of that due to the regular season playoff points that were accumulated by our top three, and now Logano locked in with his win at Martinsville. If those two, Busch and Truex, do not make it, which two drivers will be part of the Final Four? Now, for me, I believe Kyle Busch is going to make it in. No questions asked. The one that I have the question mark about is Martin Truex Jr. And why do I have that question mark? It's in terms of momentum. Now, Martin Truex Jr. has been in the front of the field for the last couple of races, but luck has not seemed to go his way, and luck is a key factor, I believe, in making it into the Final Four at Homestead. Case in point, Clint Bowyer. Clint Bowyer was on a tear during the regular season. He made it just barely into the top 12. He then makes it barely into the final 8. The momentum is not on his side because he's hit the bad luck. Same deal applies, in my opinion, with Martin Truex Jr. Truex Jr. was leading the race on the final lap at Martinsville. The bump and run, loses the spot, doesn't get an automatic locked-in ticket to Homestead. He was running really well here at Texas. Ended up having a problem. I think he ended up going through too many pit stalls, and so he had to serve a pass-through. He was able to get himself back in the lead lap. He was able to battle back, and I think he finished the race in, I want to say 7th. It might have been 10th. So he came back from that. But you cannot afford those kinds of mistakes. And Phoenix, we have seen, or ISM, I'm going to have to get in the habit of saying that, is a track where you cannot make mistakes, or else it's going to big time cost you, because it's not a very big racetrack. And you're going to lose multiple laps if you have to serve a pass-through penalty or anything like that. It also reminds me along the lines, kind of a Martinsville, especially over in what is now 1 and 2, because we've seen the bump and run put on several times at a track like that when those corners were 3 and 4, coming to the then front straightaway, now back straightaway, which is where the start-finish line was. So the momentum's not on his side right now. So I think Kyle Busch is in. Truex is a question mark. If Truex doesn't make it in, who do I think is going to make it in? Well, right now, I do not think Aric Almirola is going to make it in. I do not think Clint Bowyer is going to make it in. I think those two are surefire eliminations. That leaves Chase Elliott and Kurt Busch. If I look at the past history and drivers at that track, and based on this year as well, I'm going to give the advantage to the 9 car of Chase Elliott for 2 reasons. Number one, Chase Elliott, remember last year, got dumped by Denny Hamlin at Martinsville. He battled back, was battling with Denny Hamlin. He was up front for a good portion of that race. He seems to be really good there. Another reason is because Hendrick Motorsports, while it doesn't still seem to have its mile-and-a-half speed program up to par, I mean, you had Alex Bowman, Chase Elliott, Jimmy Johnson, and William Byron all basically from 7th on back through 15th for a majority of that race, never got up to the front of the field. This is one of the tracks that fits the criteria where speed is not necessarily a necessary thing. And I mean in terms of straightaway speed, in terms of aerodynamics, because this is Phoenix. It's all going to rely on hitting your marks, having a good handling race car, being able to put your car where you need it to be. Speed is not as much of a key factor. And where did we see Chase Elliott get his 2 wins this season? Watkins Glen, a track where it's about hitting your marks, hitting your braking zones, not necessarily about speed. There's only about 2 or 3 real fast sections of that course. So it's not really about speed there. And the other track that he won at was Dover. Again, to me, a track that I classify, I know it's a mile track, I understand that, but I classify it in terms of the way that it races more like a short track. It's more like, to me, an elongated Bristol. And again, that kind of a thing, it's down to tire wear, it's down to hitting your marks, it's down to being able to run the low line or the high line, whichever your car is set up to be. It's not as much about speed. We are coming to a track, to me, that is very similar to that criteria. You don't need the speed as much as you would think. It's about your braking zones and hitting your marks. I give the advantage. If Truex does not make it to the Final Four, I give it to Chase Elliott. If it's not going to be Logano, Harvick, Busch, and Kyle Busch, I should say, and Martin Truex Jr., it's going to be Logano, Harvick, Kyle Busch, and Chase Elliott, your Final Four at Homestead Miami Speedway. Just the way that it looks right now, based off of the track we're going to, ISM Speedway. We've got a question here as well that kind of coattails off of that from Shane Lake. Will we see a battle of the big 3, or will we see a shocker at ISM? So right now the big 3, Truex, Harvick, and Kyle Busch, we know that that 4th possible driver is going to be Joey Logano because he's locked in at Martinsville. So basically, if we took that question based on what we know and we kind of reformed it up, it would be, will we see a battle of the big 3, or will Joey Logano be able to top those 3 drivers? I don't think so. I don't think Logano is going to be able to. And the big reason is because Logano is not making friends. We've already heard from Truex what his opinion was of the finish at Martinsville. I personally think Logano did nothing wrong. It's Martinsville. The bump and run happens at short tracks. Bristol, Martinsville, doesn't matter. It always happens. We saw a bump and run at Auto Club earlier this year. It's part of the sport. Yeah, Truex was on the wrong end of it, so he's going to be mad. But Logano didn't do anything wrong because it's part of the sport. It's what happens. It's what expected at Martinsville. Not like Denny Hamlin did midway down the back straightaway back last year, but Logano did it right. And, let's face it, he didn't wreck Truex. The only reason Martin Truex Jr. wrecked coming to the line was because he turned left into Joey Logano's door. Like, Truex wrecked himself. So, okay, you know, Truex is mad. Truex says that if he makes it to Homestead, Logano's not winning the championship. And if he's in contention, Logano's not winning the championship. If he's not in contention, Logano's not winning the championship, regardless. Then you go to the race here at Texas. He's made another enemy, and that is what I said, a surefire elimination in Eric Almirola. Again, looking at it, I don't see Logano doing anything wrong. Now, believe me, I understand that people don't like Joey Logano, and so that might make their views a little bit more biased. I'm indifferent about Logano, so I can speak without any bias whatsoever, without any hate whatsoever. I'm indifferent. You know, if Logano wins, great. If Logano doesn't win, okay. But based from the objective view of unbiased opinion, which I'm able to have, again, I didn't see anything Logano did wrong. Now, Eric Almirola's frustration is they are way down in the cellar in the points, based off the fact that Truex, Harvick, Kyle Busch had those big playoff points that had basically everybody else, Elliott, Kurt Busch, Clint Boyer, and Eric Almirola, in the cellar when we left, what was it, Talladega, I think it was? I can't remember what was before Martinsville, I'm sorry. But there's frustration there. Logano's already locked in. He had the win at Martinsville. He's locked into the Final Four, so Eric feeling he shouldn't have been raced as hard as he was. It's a race. It doesn't matter if you're locked in or not. Logano wants to be able to get more wins because let's remember that if Logano wins, that's more playoff points that he's going to have. And let's be honest, based off of what we saw when the chase grid was compiled after the 12 was eliminated down to 8, those playoff points are huge. Big time huge. It automatically put Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., and Kevin Harvick back on the top of the point standings leaderboard. So Logano needs those playoff points. He needs to go out there, even though he was locked in with Martinsville, he needed to go out there at Texas. He needs to go out there next week at ISM and try and win the race because he needs those playoff points going into Homestead to counter the playoff points that were accumulated during the regular season by Harvick, Kyle Busch, and Martin Truex Jr. if those are indeed the three competitors he's going to have for the championship in the finale. So, again, I didn't see anything Logano did wrong. But he's made another enemy, Aric Almirola. Aric Almirola, who I'm certain is going to be eliminated by the time the checker flag waves next week at ISM, he's going to be gunning for Joey Logano. And we do know that Aric Almirola, based on his performance this entire season, Stewart-Haas Racing, based on their performance this entire season, they can give him cars that are going to be allowing him to get up there in the vicinity of Joey Logano and make it very tough for Logano to win the championship. So I do not see Joey Logano, with the odds stacked against him and what I just stated, I do not see him being able to topple the big three. It will be a battle between the big three if those three do make it to Homestead. Do I see a clear favorite? Not really, because all three of them are former champions, which means all three of them have taken and hoisted the championship trophy at Homestead Miami Speedway, which means they know how to get it done at Homestead when a title is on the line. So is there a clear-cut winner? No. I have Harvick on NASCAR.com Fantasy as my champion, just based off of his regular season. But we've seen, even in this round, that on any given day, one of the big three can run into issues. Next question we've got is who will be the dark horse trying to make the Final Four from Dylan Young. I basically alluded to that. I think the dark horse, if Truex doesn't make it, is going to be Chase Elliott. All right, here's, I just alluded to this, and here's a question from Johnny Gardner. Knowing that Truex and Aric Almirola want to go after Logano, will we see a 2v1 fight at Homestead or at ISM? I don't know if we'll see it at ISM because I don't think it would really matter at ISM. Truex, his goal is to make it into the Final Four, either by winning or via points. Aric Almirola, if he takes out Logano, what good's it going to do? Logano's locked into Homestead anyway. It's going to have to be at Homestead, Miami that he ends up hitting Logano at, or ends up causing a problem for Logano at. So, no, we won't see it as soon as ISM. Will we see it at Homestead, though? I think, at least for Aric Almirola's sake, I think we will. I think we'll see him be a thorn in Joey Logano's side. Truex, Dale Jr. said that Truex, a lot of the stuff he says in the heat of the moment, he doesn't even remember he said afterwards. So, based off of that, Truex is going to be running for a championship if he makes it into the Final Four. I think that's going to be forefront in his mind rather than trying to take out Joey Logano. Now, Truex also did say that the way that he could best hurt Joey Logano is by taking the championship from him at Homestead. I think that's the mental attitude that Truex needs to have because that is going to be the best way to get back at Joey Logano. This is Logano's maybe best opportunity in his career to be able to get a championship. I know that there were at least 2 other years previously that he was in the Final Four as well. And I think, was it last year or the year before? I think it was the year before when Carl Edwards put the block on him. He wrecked Carl Edwards. He had a shot there. But I really honestly think that Truex, his goal is to be beating Joey Logano, not taking Joey Logano out of the equation. Because you run the risk, if you take him out, you got a chance of taking yourself out. And I don't think Truex wants to do that. Especially with the season that he's having right now with that dark cloud hanging over, knowing that Furniture Road Racing is going to be closing up. So, let me quickly look here. Okay, we are going to talk about, now, off the coattails of Texas, we're going to talk a little bit about ISM. And what we're going to basically talk about that is the possibility of a non-playoff driver winning the race. I've already basically in the first portion here stated my case that I do not believe that Clint Bowyer, Eric Almirola, or even really Kurt Busch have a chance of making it into the Final Four. Chase Elliott, a possibility. He would replace Truex if Truex falls out. But right now, the way I see it, I think it's going to be the 22, the 18, the 4, and the 78. So is there anybody that can maybe be a little bit of a spoiler and have it be where two drivers are going to have to make it into the Final Four at Homestead Miami Speedway on points? Harvick and Logano, the only two right now that are locked in on wins. There are a couple of candidates I can see out there that do have a shot at possibly being a spoiler. And this is basically based off of driver averages, not really anything more. The one driver that I can definitely see being a spoiler is Denny Hamlin, because I've stated that I feel Phoenix, in a lot of the ways that now 1 and 2 drive, is a lot like Martinsville. And Hamlin was a pretty big competitor last year as well. So I see Hamlin possibly being a competitor there. Another driver that I see is Alex Bowman. Remember back when Bowman was filling in the 88 for Dale Earnhardt Jr. and who was it? I think it was Matt Kenseth was the leader on a restart, and Bowman got into it and wrecked it. Well, Bowman was up at the front for a good portion of that race. I think Bowman could definitely be a spoiler in all of this. And another driver I look at, while he may not be that much of a spoiler, he doesn't have a win there, but he does have, how many starts? He's got 3 starts, and all 3 starts he's finished in the top 10, and he had a really good performance at Texas this past week, and that's Eric Jones. I think Eric Jones could also play spoiler. And I realize that I'm talking about drivers that have already been eliminated from the playoffs, but I consider them right now not playoff drivers. Is there anybody between Kurt Busch, Chase Elliott, Clint Bowyer, and Eric Almirola that I think could point their way in with a win? Like I said, the only one that I can really see as a possibility is Chase Elliott. 5 starts, average finish of 6th, 2 top 5s, 4 top 10s. So he's finished in the top 10 4 or 5 races. But again, he hasn't had that win. His highest finish was 2nd, though. And in his career, his lowest finish has been 12th. So he's good at Phoenix. So if there's anybody that's going to be able to spoil the party to point their way in that comes into that race outside the cut line, I think it would be Chase Elliott. Now, Kurt Busch is also close, as is Eric Almirola. They've ended up having in their last 5 starts, Kurt Busch has had 1 top 5, 3 top 10s, best finish of 5th, worst finish of 25th, than Eric Almirola in his last 5 starts, 2 top 10s, and his best finish has been 7th, lowest has been 22nd. So I don't really see them being a factor. A lot of people have been looking at Kyle Larson as a possible spoiler. I don't see that happening for him. He was a little bit of a surprise for me at Texas, the way he was able to get up there into the top 10 in the finishing results. Finished in the 3rd position. That was a shocker for me because that car did not look like it was a top 3 car for most of that race. So maybe he'll play a little bit of a spoiler here, but do I think he's going to be able to get the win? No, I don't. So right now, based off of what I'm seeing, it's looking like it's going to very well be Logano, Harvick, Truex, and Kyle Busch basically battling for the championship at Homestead Miami Speedway. Chase Elliott, possible spoiler, but we're going to have to wait and see. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this week's episode of NNSCRA Radio. Hope you guys enjoy the layout with the podcast and everything. And next week, we will end up having an opportunity for you guys to be able to submit questions as well. If you want to submit some questions for next week, you can do that down in the comments of this video as well, and I will talk about those also. We'll be reviewing the races at ISM Speedway and looking forward to the championship four in all 3 series, Trucks, Xfinity, and Monster Energy Cup Series, heading into Homestead Miami Speedway's finale. Till then, I've been Seth Cole. Thanks for tuning to NNSCRA Radio. I will see you guys next Wednesday.